Weekend on this Sunday morning. Let's get started with the news we've been following all week long. Welcome back to Morning Joe.
The Washington Monument yet?
Not yet. Name's not on it yet.
Maybe he could gild it in gold?
Yeah. I don't know.
It's an idea.
Paint it. What color did he paint the reflecting pool? Because I can't tell what color that thing is.
That's something, isn't it?
Oof. All right. President Trump held a rally-style event in Pennsylvania. It was his first public outing since the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding with Iran last week. Basically, sort of different understandings still trying to come together is what it is. The president spoke for nearly 90 minutes, going through his usual list of political grievances and false claims. He bragged about the stock market, never really addressed affordability concerns, and claimed oil prices will come down and bring lower costs for Americans along with it. He also made a rather odd comparison about his administration forcing regime change in Venezuela and the war in Iran.
You know, the stock market hit a new high today again. And oil, for the first time in months, hit, think of it, $70 a barrel. So we got at 70. That equates to a very low price. Oil is going to come charging down. And with oil comes everything else. Because I inherited from these Democrats. You know, they're Democrats. I changed the E for a U. It's very simple, Democrats. I don't know why I didn't think of that 9 years ago. But also Iran, we knocked them out. 1 week, it was essentially militarily over. Much bigger country, 91 million people. And much different ideology. The ideology of the Muslims is slightly different than the ideology of the Catholics. We have the Catholics and the Muslims, slightly different. But Venezuela's been great and Iran's been great. I mean, you know, if Iran's reasonable, if they're smart, otherwise we'll have to finish the job, which will take about maybe less than a week. They were absolutely terrible on affordability. Remember, I got here, my first day, the fake news is screaming at me, what about affordability? I'm only here 1 day. Remember, eggs were up about 5 times higher than they ever were. And we have prices are coming down right now at levels that you've never seen. And now with oil crashing, you're going to see something really amazing.
Yeah, okay, first of all,
Wow,
oil is
so
coming
many
down.
things to point
Prices
out
not
here.
coming down. Inflation is higher today than it was when Joe Biden left office. These are all facts. Affordability, inflation again higher today.
Access
than
and
it
cost
was.
of health care?
Iran's been great. No, Iran's not been great.
Women's health care?
I could destroy them in less than a week. No, we haven't been able to, quote, destroy them over 3 months. In fact, we are capitulating to them, giving them $300 billion in war reparations, unfreezing funds, doing things that made Barack Obama's deal with the Iranians look like just like Reagan. Really, really tough. David Drucker, though, you have a new piece for Bloomberg titled Trump's Economic Pivot Isn't Coming. He's made that clear. And in it, you write, for Republicans in Congress who've been clinging to the hope that President Donald Trump might finally focus on the economy ahead of the midterms, their time might better be spent searching for proof that the tooth fairy is real. Of course, the president could focus on more than one issue at a time. That goes with the job. But he still refuses to acknowledge any aspect of the economy is underperforming on matters related to affordability. And yesterday, as we were all tuning in, David, to Pennsylvania to see whether the president was able to do that, we heard a lot of bizarre stories, a lot of false claims. At one point, talking about a burly, muscular man whose wife didn't like him despite all of his muscles because his 401k was low, and then the 401k went up, and he said, sir, all because of you. He said, well, that must be good. And then Donald Trump ended the story by saying, well, I don't think I like her anymore anyway. So for Republicans in swing districts, not exactly the message they wanted to hear on affordability. Why can't he get there?
Why is the sky blue? Listen, we've seen this now I know there's a scientific answer, but my kids ask me this all the time. I'm like, I'm not really sure. Check with God. I don't understand. All right, it's just blue, and that's the way it is. Look, this goes back a decade, right? I mean, I remember Trump's first couple of years in office during the first term. And occasionally it would appear as though he was pivoting away from unconventional, a very successful presidential candidate to a more normal functioning president, right? And was this the pivot? Was his first address to the joint session of Congress the pivot? No, a couple days later, he was accusing Barack Obama of spying on him. I remember he nominated Brett Kavanaugh for a seat on the Supreme Court, and for a lot of Republicans that were hoping that he was pivoting to a more normal functioning conservative Republican, there was a lot of excitement. And about 2 weeks later, he said that he trusted Vladimir Putin more than the U.S. intelligence community. And so I think it became something of a punchline. And Donald Trump, he's in many ways a complicated political figure, but a simple man. And he just is the way he is. And so he does not like to acknowledge, when he is the incumbent, any problems with the country, because they're all going to fall at his feet, because, we give presidents more blame and credit than they deserve. And that's the way it is when you're the incumbent president. And I will say this, he's been in office now more than a year. As I was reporting on the administration and following voters for the first 6 to 9 months of this second term, there were a lot of voters that were giving him time. He did, I hate the word inherit, because it's, with all of these politicians, it's like they got a letter one day they weren't expecting that said their long lost uncle left them a money pit, and they inherited. And what are they supposed to do? I mean, this is a job they wanted. They knew the conditions. But voters understood that the president came in and needed time to try and resurrect the economy and get prices under control. It's one of the big reasons they hired him in 2024. We've reached a point, and voters always reach a point at some point after a president's been in office a while, where they now are looking at him and saying, look, this is your gig, man. You did this. You wanted this job. We relied on you to fix things, and you're not getting it done. And so his argument isn't with us, it's with the voters. But if the president has proven anything, and if people have been paying attention, he does not pivot. He may acknowledge, and as I write in the piece, I think his effort in any way he possibly can to get out of the Iran war is a recognition that higher oil costs were exacerbating the problem of inflation. But an acknowledgement is not a pivot, and I wouldn't expect him, based on history and a past his prologue, and it always is with President Trump, to start focusing relentlessly on the economy versus saying this is all a Democratic hoax, everything is fine.
Yeah, I mean, in the middle of this war, he infamously said, I don't care about people's financial situations, when he was asked about the consequence of the Strait of Hormuz being closed and people's gas prices going up. He said he didn't care about that. So he's kind of on the record, and you hear more of that when he says affordability is a hoax. I'm curious, David, though, as you travel the country talking to Republican voters, we always hear that, there's some who are breaking, who are done with Trump. They're exhausted. They want to move on, turn the page from the show. And then they seem to, not all of them, but they seem to find their way back. But given the war, given the Epstein files, given the state of the economy, the MAGA base is going to stay with him. What's your sense of where sort of rank and file Republicans are sitting right now with Donald Trump?
Look, I think rank and file Republicans are going to largely stick with the candidates that are running for office in midterm elections. The question is going to be, one, where do they fit in the coalition, right? How close are they? If we're looking at this coalition like a solar system, how close are they to the sun, right? And the further away they are from the center of gravity, the more chance for some fraying, the more chance that they'll sit on their hands and not show up. Depends what the trigger will be. Maybe it'll be the economy. Maybe for some, it'll be the president's handling of the Iran war with this, memorandum of understanding. I think we will, though, see, and we see this in midterm elections usually, even when there's a rout by one party, where voters tend to come home at the end of the day and support their party, even if they have misgivings about the president, especially in these very polarized political times with such deep splits. But watch turnout, watch the different parts of the coalition, because you join the coalition, you're a part of the Republican Party for different reasons, and the further away you are from the president to begin with, the more likely you are to either not show up or to cross the aisle and vote for a Democrat, if it's the right kind of Democrat in a swing district. We're referencing New York with Kate Conley, really good example there, where you have a Democrat that could appeal to some swing and soft Republicans.
It's the Dobbs decision, the Supreme Court case that effectively overturned Roe v. Wade and repealed the constitutional right to an abortion. Since that decision, states across the country have enacted their own laws, with 13 outright banning the procedure. Despite this, the number of abortions since the decision has actually risen. There were nearly twice as many abortions in the United States in 2025 than in 2021. That is due in large part to the rise in telehealth and the widespread practice of mailing abortion pills across the country. Access to the pill is the target of several huge legal battles in the states with abortion bans going on right now. Joining us now, abortion access correspondent for The Nation, Amy Littlefield. She's the author of the book, Killers of Roe: My Investigation into the Mysterious Death of Abortion Rights. It's good to have you on the show. I want to ask you about the book, but also the state of, let's start off with the state of women's health care as a whole, because it's not just the fall of Roe and access to life-saving health care that is abortion, and the numbers of cases that we've covered here on this show of women who have had their lives threatened, have been forced to give birth to dying or dead babies, and then, by the way, denied the access to ever create life again because they became sterilized in the process. That sick process has been playing out in this country ever since the fall of Roe. But also now the access to health care itself and the cost of it. Can you talk about the overall state of health care for women in America today?
Yes, thank you so much, Mika. It's great to be with you. I think this is a somber day when we have to hold two realities in our minds at the same time. 4 years after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, the number of abortions has increased, but so has the number of pregnancy-associated deaths in states that ban abortion. One of those outcomes was entirely tragically predictable. The other one is surprising. So let's start with the surprising part, right? The number of abortions has gone up, and that's because of abortion pills by mail, because of brave clinicians in Democratic states mailing abortion pills into states where abortion is banned. No one thought that every year after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, we were going to see an increase in the number of abortions. So that's really astounding. But we cannot lose sight of the fact that tens of thousands of people have been forced into pregnancy against their will because not everyone has been able to find out about or to access these options. And so what that means is that the latest data tells us there has been 68 additional pregnancy-associated deaths by the end of 2023 alone. There's always a lag in the data in states that have banned abortion. Now, 68 might sound like a small number, but I would argue that when we measure that in terms of mothers leaving behind grieving children, in terms of parents being forced to cope with the loss of daughters, in terms of partners leaving children, when partners losing their wives, when we start to look at this in terms of the scale of the human tragedy and the fact that these deaths were foreseeable and preventable, I think it's a number that should stop us in our tracks.
Well, in fact, your latest piece for The Nation is titled 4 Years After Dobbs, How Do We Count the Dead? You write, quote, 4 years after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade with its ruling in Dobbs, there's an image I can't get out of my head. Portia Gomezi was living in Texas when she suffered a miscarriage in 2023. Texas punishes medical providers who violate the state's abortion ban with up to 99 years in prison. After Gomezi showed up to the hospital bleeding and miscarrying at 11 weeks pregnant, ProPublica reported doctors delayed providing a simple procedure to remove fetal tissue, and so she bled to death. For months afterward, Portia's 3-year-old son would chase after women who looked like her on the street, shouting, "That's Mommy." That's the detail I can't forget. I can't stop imagining that little boy chasing after strangers on the street. And that story repeats itself. And I just wonder where this is going in terms of numbers and in terms of perhaps the dwindling numbers of doctors who will be brave enough to help women like this. at their time of need. We're talking about basic health care to save a life.
Yes, exactly. We are talking about people dying when they're miscarrying because doctors are too afraid to intervene and save their lives. And I just want to mention a couple of other stories, right? Because it is these human stories, not just the numbers. We can become inured to numbers, right? But these human stories, right? Tiara Walker in Texas, she's suffering from high blood pressure and seizures from pregnancy. She doesn't want to leave behind her son, JJ, who's 14. So she tries to get an abortion, but she's not considered to be sick enough. And so instead of getting that abortion, Tiara ends up dying. Her son finds her draped over her bed on his birthday. Okay, these are the stories that we're talking about. Nevaeh Crane, 18 years old. Her mother has to watch her organs fail as she dies because she was sent home twice from emergency rooms in Texas. So we have to sit with these real human stories. I mean, there's a long time saying in the pro-choice movement that abortion bans don't stop abortions, they only stop safe abortions. I think in 2026, with the widespread availability of medication abortion, that saying needs an upgrade. What we know, what we have known for decades, is that abortion bans do not stop abortions. What they do is they kill women.
Abortion access correspondent for The Nation, Amy Littlefield. Thank you very much. Amy's book, Killers of Roe, My Investigation into the Mysterious Death of Abortion Rights, is available now. And Adrienne Elrod, I'd like to turn to you on this issue and how Democrats position themselves. It's my belief that this should be brought into the affordability issue because we have the closing of rural hospitals across the country, the skyrocketing cost of health care. That's a universal, non-debatable issue that's impacting all Americans. The issue of abortion, of course, there's a huge debate in this country. It's often infused with false religious pretenses, and it becomes a sidetrack. At the same time, women's lives are in danger and they can't afford their health care. Is there a way Democrats can put that into words in a way that has an impact at the ballot box?
Well, Mika, I think you just answered your own question and you put it beautifully. We have to talk about, regardless of where you stand on abortion, right? Which, by the way, a significant majority of Americans support women being able to access abortions, even if they themselves don't believe in abortions for themselves personally. But we have to talk about it in the affordability lens because, you know, I think the author of this book just laid it out. Some of these stories that we are reading about and that are still happening every day that are not making headlines, where women are dying because they can't get life-saving care when they have an issue with their pregnancy. And even if they don't want to have an abortion, sometimes things happen and they have to, and you have fewer and fewer doctors who will perform them. And then you layer on top of that the fact that rural hospitals are closing down because of the affordability issue and because Trump is taking away funding from those rural hospitals. So I personally think, Mika, Democrats could do a slightly better job of sort of correlating these two. You know, we talk about affordability across the country. Candidates are talking about it left and right. They are meeting the moment in their own communities about how affordability issues are affecting their constituents. But in order to correlate the abortion access, lack thereof, to affordability is something that I think we could do, frankly, a better job of doing.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Donnie, let's talk really quickly about a branding issue. As we talk about the Democrats going into the fall, you know, we have been inundated with so much coming at us, whether you talk about the failure of the Iran war, whether you talk about the scandal surrounding the Epstein files. We've talked in shorthand about costs, corruption, cruelty, chaos, all of that. As I was reading through Maggie and Jonathan's book this past weekend, a number jumped out at me. I forgot, because of all of the things that are going on, forgot the massive size of health care cuts that the Republicans passed along to working Americans with a big, beautiful bill. I know you and I talked about this a lot before, but there was already a crisis in rural health care. There could be like Armageddon in rural health care because of this Republican-passed bill and slashing Medicaid the way Republicans did, in a way that will disproportionately hurt red states over blue states.
Yeah, look, if I go down on the list, there's a lot the Democrats have to talk about. Going back to our debate earlier, my concern, the same way that every issue gets clouded by the fact that, are the Democrats socialists now? The same way in MAGA, there are a lot of candidates in a lot of Republicans who are basically not MAGA, but the party is branded MAGA. My concern is all those issues you're talking about, all those left-brain issues that the Democrats do have on their side, get overshadowed now by an overall banner of socialism. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's the way I feel.
Yeah, okay, but Donnie, come on, man. I shouldn't have to tell you this. You are the advertising hero. You are the branding legend.
Yes.
Yeah. Wait. What's I think Brit Hume once said, like, the dog doesn't like the dog food. If I'm living in Mike Lawler seat and my child gets their health care because of Medicaid, or if my family is affected, or if I'm out in Oklahoma, or if I'm out in California in a swing district, or I'm anywhere.
Maine?
I can hear people yapping about Mom Donnie in New York City, and I can also look at my child and go, well, I can't get her the health care she needs.
You're right. I'm looking at 28,
Bill Clinton told me Bill Clinton told me after 2024 on this show, why did the Democrats lose? Because they didn't reach people where they live.
And don't go anywhere. We've got a lot more to talk about.
In New York, and we are now joined by one of the winners, State Assemblyman Mika Lasher, who emerged victorious from the crowded field in New York's 12th district. Also with us at the table, the editor of The New Republic, Michael Tomasky, and co-founder and CEO of All In Together, Lauren Leader. Our thanks to all of you for being here, and congratulations.
Thank you.
On last night. It was a close race, as anticipated, crowded field, close race. What do you think made the difference in the end?
I think at the end of the day, the voters of the district that I'm running in, or that I've won the primary in, still want seriousness in government, want someone who can take on Donald Trump and continue the representation they've had from Jerry Nadler, who's been a progressive leader in the House and a voice of moral clarity.
So of those you defeated, Kennedy heir Jack Schlossberg, George Conway, pundit, Assemblyman Alex Boris, who was a close second place. We've had a debate about what these results mean, and certainly New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani had a good night. Some of the candidates that he blessed won. Now, he wasn't really involved in your race, but there was a thought here that there was fear expressed that the Mamdani label could actually then make it easy for Republicans to paint with a broad brush all Democrats. Joe pushed back on that and said, no, you have different candidates for different races, different states, different cities. What's your take?
I think that every election cycle, the Republicans pick a boogeyman, and it's been Nancy Pelosi, it's been AOC, and they're always going to find a boogeyman. And so that, to me, who won the primaries last night is not going to make the difference in the upcoming midterms.
Lauren, let's get your take us the question, please, to someone, but let's get your thoughts on that, the branding, if you will, of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I agreed with Mike on this one. I do worry very much about it. And I think there is something very different. To me, this was like a Tea Party kind of election for Democrats. We have been seeing this growing backlash against incumbents. I mean, Micah, you were really one of the few in New York that benefited from the support of incumbency, as you said, the support of Jerry Nadler, all of the other races that support from incumbents, whether that was Nydia Velázquez or, Adriano Aspiat, they all lost after that. So your district, kind of unique in New York City. I think the concern that I hear everywhere, obviously, and you have a very heavily Jewish district on the Upper West Side, on the Upper East Side, there's a lot of angst about the mainstreaming of some very, very virulent anti-Israel rhetoric in the Democratic Party. Lots to say about the role of AIPAC in there. Your district's a little different, but where do you think now in this new delegation, how do you guys find a way to come together and, govern together as a New York delegation in the fall?
I think it's a really good question. I'm very proud to represent the most Jewish congressional district in America, or to hopefully represent the most Jewish congressional district in America, pending the results in November. And ran as a very proud Jew. And I think there are real questions, real concerns that people in my community and the Jewish community around the city are feeling about anti-Semitism being normalized. And that is something we're going to have to confront. It's certainly something that I want to play a role in confronting as we go forward.
We certainly saw in the Lander victory over Goldman, the incumbent, that the support for Israel was a key factor there, and many believe that's why Goldman was defeated. Michael, again, please take a question to the assemblyman, but also talk about the Trump factor in all of this, because like George Conway, who joined us yesterday on Election Day, made clear his whole campaign was to nationalize it, to make it about Trump. He didn't fare that well. Right. Other candidates have struck more of a balance. Is that the lesson from Democrats? Yes, you have to talk Trump, but you got to make sure you keep local issues at my heart too.
Yeah.
Well, I think you always have to keep local issues in mind when you're running for Congress, and you have to, as you already know, and certainly will learn, the job will teach you, you're going to have to tend to the district, and you've been doing that anyway as a staffer for Jerry Nadler. But yeah, local issues are always important, and you have to pay. When you lose touch with those, that's when they that's when they start thinking you're out of touch. That's when you're vulnerable to that kind of attack. We've seen that happen many times with veteran members of Congress. I do think that Israel's going to be the big divide between these socialists and members like you. I think that on economics, I don't see all that much disagreement, really. I mean, everybody's moving in a more progressive direction on economics, and I personally think that's a good thing. The Democrats need to do more to show working Americans that we're on your side and we're going to fight for you. I think everybody more or less agrees on that, or most people do. But Israel's going to be a dividing line in the Democratic Party in a big way.
No question, both this fall and in 2028. Last question to you. If you are elected, again, you do have a general election opponent, but it's certainly a heavily Democratic district. But if you were to represent the Trump factor, what would be some things that a Democratic House, if the House is flipped, which many prognosticators believe it will, what are some things that could be done to check Donald Trump?
I think we need to go in on day one with a robust plan for oversight and investigations and accountability, as well as focus on the laws that they have exploited or norms that need to be codified in statute to ensure that we don't have a future president who can do what Donald Trump has done to our rule of law. And I think Democrats need to walk in with a plan on day one.
Coming up, the highs and lows of the American experiment.
ভিতর গভীরে তোমাকে সাজিয়ে নৌকো ভাসিয়ে